Flows break down, data moves slow, loops keep spinning. Where does it go? You're building apps, but time's a thief. Your platform's stuck, you're losing belief. Click by click, you try to mend, but delegation breaks again. SharePoint stalls, Dataverse screams. Feels like you're coding in broken dreams. No more killers in the code. Power up, it's time to go. Automate or logic flow. Pick your side, let's steal the show. From zero to hero, now's the time. Optimize the speed, redefine. Watch us break the limits, rise. It's performance time, we electrify. Queries drag, loops overflow. What's the fix? You need to know. Is it SQL, SharePoint, or something clean? We're dropping tips straight from the scene. Monitor, measure it, factor your flow. No more timeout, just watch it go. With Fortunato, Isabelle, Marcel's light, and MVP Sean in the fight. No more killers in the code. Power up, it's time to go. This ain't theory, this is real. Click and tune up, close the deal. You're living fast, we troubleshoot. Power platform now reboot. From lag to lightning, feel the thrill. We fix the flow, we own the scale.
That was incredible, and I mean that completely unironically. I enjoyed every minute of that. I don't even know where I am right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. I had to take my headset again because it fell off my head during the run. Anyways, welcome everyone to another episode to the Power Platform Pain Points, the show where we give people the opportunity to tell us about their problems and where we find together solutions, a bit like a self-help group. And like every good self-help group, we start by telling our names and what our pains are. But let me begin. My name is Fortunato, the guy that was abbreviated by 42 or 4-2, your host. And yes, the name is real. And when it comes to Power Automate, I'm as fortunate as a snowball on the sun. I've been working with the Power Platform for 5 years now, and I've collected enough performance horror stories to write out of blog posts or to host this show with my lovely special guests like Isabelle. Isabelle, your turn, please.
Yeah, hello everyone. I am Isabelle, and I am the co-host who spent more time debugging Power Apps more than I care to admit. I love diving into technical details that makes apps actually work, and more importantly, works really fast.
Yeah, and hi, my name is Marcel. I'm a director consulting expert from CGI, and I'm running into much trouble regarding to Power Automate in the past years. And that's why I said, let us invite one of the masters of, I would say, Power Automate or Power Platform, Sean, our guest today.
Hi, I'm Sean. I train people to be solutions architects in the Power Platform, and obviously performance is a key best practice in solution architecture. So I'm excited to explore it all with everybody on this call. We got some great demos and a lot of fascinating questions.
All right, thank you. Welcome everyone. Then now that we know each other to some extent, let's dive directly into our topic. As you can see in my back, I'm just standing in the middle of my Formula One pit stop telemetry area where, we as mechanics, we want to talk about real stuff, performance issues that are probably hunting your dreams right now. So, Marcel, want to talk about it?
Yeah, let us talk about our agenda for today. I think the first one is the Power Automate flow optimization, because the most problems what we see are regarding to, I would say, bad configuration of workflows. The second one is data source performance issues. Yeah, who knows my comics? You know the problems with SharePoint and some other data sources. This is a really important point, I think. And monitoring and troubleshooting. What can you do to find your problem? And the fourth one is Power Automate versus Logic Apps. One of my favorite points. I'm a big fan of Logic Apps, and who wins, Logic Apps or Power Automate regarding the performance. And our last topic for today is a question and answer, like in every of our streams, and this could be in rapid fire to question Sean everything what you want to need.
Yeah, if we're really lucky, we might even get to see Marcel's famous performance optimization flowchart that he prints out and frames it in his office wall.
Yeah, if we are lucky, right? Thank you. Do not forget to drop your questions into the chat. We love hearing about your specific performance nightmares. And remember, we are not just here to complain about slow apps. We're here to fix them. Milko in the back end will get all your questions. The guy that will never show his face. Perhaps one day, you never know. At the moment, he's in the background collecting your questions. So use this opportunity to bombard him with what you want to ask us. Marcel.
Yeah, I think we should talk with our first segment, the Power Automate and Flow Automation, and time to talk about Power Automate. Sean. Oh, no, Fortunato, sorry. The first question.
You can call me Sean whenever you want, but I'm not the real Sean. But I'm pointing towards the real Sean. I hope he's in this corner at this point. I don't know anyways. Sean, what are the most common flow patterns that lead to performance issues, and how do you restructure them for better efficiency?
For sure. So a common one, it'll be a lot easier if I share my screen and explain what I'm talking about.
Go ahead.
Is a lot has to do with parallel processing, loops. I see that going really poorly a lot of times. For instance, here, you'll notice in this flow here, I have this HTTP call where it has to confirm some kind of certificate. And then I have another HTTP call right afterwards. A lot of times these can happen in parallel. So all you need to do is create a parallel branch like I did. And as soon as you drag this down, you can have these happening at the same time. And then when these are done happening simultaneously, it can continue to the next step. I found this a lot easier or a lot faster than always having to have this one wait for this one, especially when they don't need to happen simultaneously. And this is just really easy and quick to set up. Another one I've seen is the inefficiency of using loops. For instance, here, I'll show you if we scroll back up. What I end up getting in here is a list of a bunch of instructors, like teachers. I'll zoom in more. And then that's it. It's just an array, a list of teachers. But the problem is I want to add a status to them. And I see this happen a lot. People loop over all the instructors. They get the status. They add the status here. And this is fine. It works. It's just incredibly slow. So one way to get around that can just make it run faster, and this takes really no time at all, is you just come up here into settings, and then you just turn on concurrency and then speed it up. I'll warn you, if you're using the HTTP action, it limits you to only like about 48. If you jump into 50, you're going to get an error. So there's a little tip if anyone's trying that. And then while we're here, if we want to keep going, you don't even need to use an apply to each. Marcel, I see you blog on this one all the time. One of my favorites is just using the select statement. So we can come down here, pick that. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing as all 3 of these steps and this variable, and I'm going to do it all in one action. So I just come in here and then I pick my, where are they? My instructors. And then I go in here and I select kind of what I was doing earlier, like this. And I would just go in here, put this here, and then go under expression and just do the same thing. Item, and then choose it. And then that's it. So when this is all done, I already have this ready for you. I can delete this. And then I can come down here and it'll end up looking like this. And if you look at this, this right here, this code is identical to what's happening right here. But the best part is what I did right here, I can delete 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So these 4 steps, I did it all in one. And in case you want to see the output, it looks like this. So if we scroll up here, this one took 9 seconds to run. This will apply to each. But then if we scroll down here, we'll see that this one took 0 seconds to run when it did that. So those are a few of my favorite performance tips, especially around Power Automate, that are just super quick. You can all apply them right now if you're not using them already.
Awesome.
Yeah, we see some comments saying Sean is still using the old designer. I mean, I'm still using the old designer. If you're using the new designer, props to you. There's sometimes it's just hard to see the branching. So,
For sure.
yeah. So for the next one, Sean, every connector have its courts. Which connector do you see causing the most performance headaches? And what are your optimization strategies?
Yeah, so a common one I see a lot is people whine about the, not they whine, we're just limited with like the SharePoint connector, especially in what it can do. And I see a lot of times also with the Excel, like if they don't let you, even in Dataverse, it doesn't let you like batch send records a lot of times. So I see people get around that using the HTTP pre-authorized, making that graph API request I see works really well. Even SharePoint, Outlook, they have their own like send an HTTP request with SharePoint. I see that used a lot. They're great and they accomplish it. It's just frustrating that we have to use those and we don't have a clear batch action that we can use. When it comes to like getting into like throttling limits or something like that, that's not really connector specific, but you do got to realize you're limited to, on a basic user license, 40,000 like actions you can run in a day, which is a ton actually. And we're going to talk about that in Logic Apps. But once you hit that limit, you're going to see your flows like dramatically slow down. So.
Wonderful new word. Okay, great.
Yeah, I know that problem. So, but I hit this connections by more than one customer. But I think one important point is now coming to us, and this is error handling. So as you said, you talk about HTTP requests, and when I'm thinking about status codes and something, and that's what we all know this fails. And what do you think? What are the best error on retry logic methods? What do you know?
Yeah, so there's a few. I think before you even get into retry, I think you need to log your errors properly. I think you can really be the hero at your company if you find the error and you get notified before the end user pretty much finds out. And there's a really simple flow you can use to accomplish this. I use this on almost like every project I have. So right here, and yes, I'm using the new designer for all of you. So in this one here, I have this error handler flow, and all it does is it receives a...
You're not sharing if you are supposed to be sharing.
Really? It says sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try it.
Maybe just
it
me.
may take some time. No, it's me also. I thought initially it would be also only me.
What about now?
It works.
There you go.
Cool. Party. So in here, we'll notice if we like zoom in here, all this is accepting is the name of a Power Automate flow, who I should be emailing, the name of the flow, and then exactly where the flow failed, which I think is very, very cool. So in here, I have this flow, and this flow right here is one that already crashed. So if we zoom in a little bit, it was supposed to run all the steps I needed to do are all in here. And if any of these fails, I put them in a scope. And right here, I have a scope that if anything crashes, it's going to pass it to this handler. And the handler is pretty neat. So inside of it, you'll notice that the first thing it does is it finds the URL of exactly where the flow run failed. So you're not going on this like treasure hunt trying to find it. You just use this URL and it'll take you right here. And you can see the problem. The next thing it does is it filters and finds all the errors that happened in the flow. And then it passes them to my error handler. And in here, it gives me the flow URL, the flow message. And then where things get fascinating is inside of this error handling flow. Again, I reuse this error handler flow across projects. It figures out what environment I'm in. It figures out who I'm supposed to be like messaging in here, who on my team. I could also use a shared inbox. I can email this. I personally don't like getting a ton of emails that are errors, so I put them in a Teams channel. You can make a nice table, whatever you want, and then you just post it. So I think this will really make sense if I show you live. So in here, this is how it is like right now. So if this particular flow that does onboarding fails, so let's fail it right now and run it. I swear, if it succeeds, I'm gonna lose it. So it did fail like it's supposed to. It went in here, something crashed here. I don't know what crashed here. I might not have built this flow. Somebody else on my team did, but they were using it. And then in here, I went to my error handler, and then look at this. Inside of Teams, I get a cool little message that says errors from flows. And I click into it, and it's like, oh, error here at this flow. The provided host name cannot be. Oh, I see. I spelled it wrong. There's the problem. I know what it is right here. And then I can even click this flow. It opens up to exactly where the failure was. And I can be like, oh, this is what went on here. Cool. And then that's like ready to go. I use this on like every project I've ever had. And I found this much more helpful than just using the out of the box error handling. Like in the admin center, you can see all your flows that failed, but some flows, maybe I don't care about getting messages about them. And some of them are much more urgent and mission critical, and I want to see those all the time. So this is one of my favorite go-tos.
And then one quick tip is that in the Teams message or the email of the error, if you add environment in there, so we know this is for production, this is for testing. Sometimes I leave my flow in test and I totally forgot about it. So you know if from the first glance, if it's critical or not.
Exactly. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Another question is more going towards triggers. They basically can make or break flow performance. What's your approach to choosing and configuring triggers for optimal performance?
Yeah. So before we do that, my thinking, anytime I hear the solution is Power Automate, I try not to use it. I try to see if there's anything else that exists first off. Can I use Power Effects? Can I use a calculated column? Can I use a formula? Can I use anything else just because of what we've been talking about, which is Power Automate's lovely, but it is a separate tool living in a separate place that does not run under the same security infrastructure as the rest of like Dataverse or SharePoint or wherever. So the first thing I do is, can I not use it? If I do have to use Power Automate, I look at trigger conditions, which appear, I don't know if it's worth showing it, but when you make a trigger, you can decide on what are the rules that need to be met before it runs. Like the status needs to be active, or it needs to come from a certain endpoint. You can lock it down that only like certain users can ping that endpoint. Those are some of the main ones I look at. Other people I see get into the conversation of like, should you use webhooks or should you use polling? Webhooks are amazing. They're kind of tricky to explain here, but I'll explain them briefly. It's rather this idea that when you send something to a flow, the flow does its processing and then it sends to your specific URL a response. I don't always love that architecture because that's more work for me. I have to remember what your URL is. I have to log all that. So I like polling, which is, hey, my flow is going to do its job. But it's your responsibility to go call my table or go find out if it's finished. I'm putting that on you. Of course, that other developer needs to know what they're doing and not make too many requests to my Dataverse environment. But one way to get around that is you give them a separate license, a separate user, and then if they burn out their account, that's their problem. It's not yours. It's one of those things where it's like, I just want to make my flow great and not worry about debugging your stuff. Hot take.
Very good. Yeah, well, let's move on to data sources, because sometimes the problem isn't your app or flow, it's where you're getting your data from.
Is Marcel supposed to ask me something, or am I supposed to just roll?
I think Marcel was about to ask something.
Yes.
Because he was there, he was waiting there.
Yeah, so one of my favorite data sources is SharePoint. So Fortu works more on the, I would say, dynamic side, and I'm on the Canvas side. And yeah, I would say. And I think SharePoint as a database could be a really performance killer. Do you know why?
Yeah, so there's quite a few. The simplest one is once you get to a certain amount of records, and then Marcel, I'm sure you know the exact number, it starts to really slow down. And then that's just basic. Like, I don't think SharePoint is anywhere near as bad as people say. I think a lot of Dataverse people insult it just because maybe they don't necessarily understand that you can optimize it a lot of ways. Like a SharePoint list, like you can index it just like you can any like SQL database you've ever worked with. That will speed things up a lot. Another one, granted this is more annoying, is you can just take some of those records and archive them. Honestly, you should be doing that in Dataverse anyways. Like, how many of your records do you need over how many years do people actually care about that? Those are some of the easier ones. When you get into like Canvas apps, it gets a little different because when you're pulling in from SharePoint, you need to worry about delegation limits and like your 5,000 record count. And then in particular, the one I've seen the most that really slows it down is lookup columns, just because that's making an extra HTTP request each time. So now you're like getting, I don't know, 20 instructors. And then if you want to look up to their course, now you're making 20 more calls, unfortunately. Marcel, I know you're using SharePoint a good amount, and I'm happy you are. Are you seeing any performance issues besides the ones we already talked about?
Yeah, so I think the lookup column is the most important killer, because if you create more than 12 lookup or people picker columns, when it's not possible to create a Canvas app on it. And this is a performance killer number one and usage killer number one for me. But the main part is what you said, with 5,000 items. So if it's more than 5,000 items, if you have an index or not, it's ever been a little bit more complicated to create workflows or handle this. And that's why I said Dataverse has ever been the best data source if you grow up on more than 5,000 items. And for every, I would say, critical data, that you have. So if you work with critical data or critical company, you build a critical company app or workflows, Dataverse would be better than SharePoint. But we use it for a lot of scenarios. Yeah.
For sure. And then another thing I see a lot is, and we'll see if you can see my screen right here, is
not yet.
Not yet. Now it's loading.
There you go.
Okay.
Great. So here's a custom page in Dataverse, and this right here is a list of resumes and people, and it's pointing to this SharePoint list right here. Such an obvious performance killer when you're doing this is this app right here lets me do certain things like, I don't know, write first impressions or interact with this data. Like, let's say Carlos arrived late to meeting with Marcel. And then I can save that here, and it's great, and it does it. So this seems performant and stuff, but here's the main issue here with this app is, what is this app doing that SharePoint isn't already doing? I think a giant performance killer is you building unnecessary apps. So besides Power Automate being a red flag in my head, if someone offers a Canvas app, I'm like, you better sell me this thing, because if all you're saving is like a click or so, like, this better be making money in ways that this isn't, or otherwise we are building not just a performance issue, but a maintenance issue. So that's just a little adjacent tip I'd suggest, is think twice about Canvas apps.
I think this is an adoption issue, because so I was an SharePoint consultant for, I would say, 10 years. And so I come to the customers, and the customers said to me, no, we didn't want this. We didn't want this. When comes the day where was Teams released, and they say, oh, Teams, perfect. And SharePoint is behind that. And this is a problem. If you create a Power app, you say, it looks nice. It wears everything on one screen. And but you can get the same from a SharePoint sometimes. Yeah, not in every, but as said, if you want to build something complex with more than one screen, it's better to when you can create a Canvas app, but one screen, no. Okay.
Sometimes people start with one function because they are feeling overloaded by the SharePoint functionalities, and then they end up replicating basically SharePoint when they are getting used to step by step. So in the end, you get the question, why did we do this in first place? So that's the point, right? But then it's already too late. Okay, let's move on. Another topic regarding premium connectors, because organizations move to premium connectors like a SQL Server, they expect better performance. But Sean, what are the gotchas that can make premium connectors perform actually worse than standard ones?
Yeah, so if we're talking about the SQL connector in general, if your database is poorly designed, which I'll give you an example in a second, you're going to run into the same performance issues anyways. Just because you purchase a premium connector doesn't mean you got some fast lane on the highway on the Autobahn. It's like, no, now you're just allowed to connect to it. That's all that happens. The SQL one is a bit strange. If you're doing Azure Cloud, like, you're going to be fine. It'll work as expected. If you're doing on-premise and you're using the data gateway, you're going to get this false sense that, oh, I can just use all the same actions. No, you can't. You can't write raw SQL to the on-premise, to an on-premise connection with SQL as you can with a cloud connection. The cloud connection lets you use all the actions. The on-premise one does not. So you get in this really frustrating thing where it's like, I don't want all the records in my table. I want to filter it down and maybe do some kind of a query that only gets certain ones. Well, now you have to build a view. Oh, wait, you need it to be dynamic, where sometimes I want all the instructors from South Jutland, or I want all the instructors from like Germany, and I need it to be dynamic, and now the view doesn't work. So now your only option is, and I didn't figure this out, my coworker pointed it out, is you have to use stored procedures. So now you're building this extra thing that lives in the SQL database just to support what you're doing in Power Automate, unfortunately. And anyone who just works on the SQL side is going to be very confused why that stored procedure exists. Those are some of the ones I've seen. I'm curious what you all have seen in this area.
Not exactly on the Microsoft area, but I came into another similar topic when I used a former programming language called Clarion, which basically no one really knows outside of the US. I think it was developed in California and such. And there you have neat embed points, and then you can do some rapid application creating. And there were some really interesting topics where you could do a lot of database independent topics, like for Oracle or SQL Server, it doesn't matter. It generated the code, but it was a catastrophe. And so you ended up creating stored procedures on the end. So you gave up basically all the benefits of using a specific tech because you run into performance issues and such. So it's a bit similar to that, but I'm also experiencing the same issues again and again. So I strongly agree here. Also, the German Autobahn comparison is great. You can technically drive as fast as you can, unless you drive into other cars or into construction site. We have plenty of them, more than stars, actually. But that's another topic.
Moving on from SQL or on-premise, let's talk about Dataverse. So Dataverse is supposed to be the premium data platform for Power Platforms. What are the performance considerations that people often overlook?
Yeah, so there's a few, and they can be tricky, unfortunately, in the background. So the first one is if you have a lot of plugins registered on your Dataverse records, especially if they're in the pre-operation, that means anytime somebody makes a request or something, it's going to have to run your plugin. So this code just runs and gets in the way. It also has to check all the security roles. If you had a lot of those, it has to do that comparison. Like there's some steps that happen along the way, but it is still incredibly performant. Like it is a wonderful database until you start to get really complicated. So you can see my screen, yeah?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Now,
Actually,
it's a running gag today. So.
All right. So there's something called a TDS connection. So Power Automate does not use it. Power Automate just makes an HTTP request, and then the records come back. Power BI uses a tabular data stream. It's like a SQL connection. It looks like SQL. You connect to it from any kind of SQL tool, and it's wonderful, and it runs very powerfully. You can do all kinds of complex queries. I love it. The problem is when you start getting in this situation where you have a lot of joins to a lot of different tables, that really slows it down, and it makes your Power BI report have to wait a long time to get all this, and then you're just kind of like swimming in all this data. So in this case, when you do have all of these nested relationships, to get around that, you're going to have to either flatten your data, which means take some of these tables and shove them into one, or there's tools built specifically for this, and I won't go through all the slides here, but the main one I wanted to call out is right here. You could use Synapse Link. And what it does is you set this up in Azure. All of this comes out of the box. You just like connect it. Like you just set up Azure Synapse. It's just a click setup. And then you go to your Dataverse environment and then you connect the two. And then that's it. And then now what you're going to get is behind the scenes, it's going to do all kinds of like complex, it's going to take your Dataverse data and it's going to shove it into what they're called. I think it's not on this slide. Where is it? Cool. Here it is. Delta Parquet files, and in those they become kind of like, you could think of them as like CSVs, and they are incredibly fast. You can query them, you could do millions of records, you could join them. Everything on Fabric is using this in the background. Fabric rarely connects directly to Dataverse if you built it properly. So like here, there's, let me see here. It looks like this. There's a new, you can set up shortcuts and you can connect Fabric to your Dataverse environment. And then it's going to put it all in those Parquet files for you. And then Power BI is no longer talking to Dataverse directly. It's talking to your quote unquote clone of your data in the Parquet files. And it'll be way more performant, much faster. However, that adds a little bit of, it's just more expensive now because now you're paying for Fabric. But if you paid for Fabric, if everything I just showed you in Azure kind of freaked you out, what's amazing about Fabric is that it's all taken care of for you. You don't even have to like really go into Azure to set that up. Versus Azure Synapse, you do, but Azure Synapse is cheaper.
Yeah, amazing, really amazing. So let us move to our next segment, monitoring troubleshooting. So I think nearly everyone who works with Power Automate runs into trouble. Fortu, next, could you
How come
the next question?
we talk about troubles? We directly are connected with my name. This is really interesting. So, but it's okay. I'm the troublemaker here. Yeah. Basically, that's it. What built-in monitoring, Sean, and analytics tools do you recommend for identifying performance issues in Power Platform solutions in general?
Yeah, so of course you have the Power Platform Admin Center, which is going to give you all kinds of graphs and insights as to what is happening in your different environments. I've also seen a lot of people propose like you can look at like flow analytics inside of Power Automate and see how your flows are doing. I find those rather kind of confusing and to be a bit much. If you install the Center for Excellence, that can give you a really transparent overview of what's happening across all your different environments. How many Power Automate flows are used? How many are like who's owning what? Though I will say I rarely meet an organization that's comfortable with just the center of excellence. Any company that needs this broad level of understanding of their Power Platform environment usually use a mix of center for excellence and then kind of build their own. I've had James Connolly has visited my program and gave some amazing explanations of how he's handled governance, because he works with the most users I've ever heard of. I think it's like 40,000 or something. And in that, he's had to like customize for his team some of his own dashboards and some of his own analytical tools in order to give him what the center of excellence and what the admin center is not. So there are built-in tools, but I think to get the specific things you care about, you're going to have to go custom most likely if you have an organization that's like even above large size.
And what type of functionalities are they building on top of the Center of Excellence or other things? I'm just curious to know, because I have a lot of clients that have big users, like I would say about 50K active users, where they're trying to roll out Power Platform company-wide, but slowly. You got to make sure your Power Platform environment is made for that and make sure somebody manage it. What are those type of tools they're adding on top of that, Sean?
For sure. So a lot of them is, it becomes a governance issue of you want people to follow proper security protocols. That's like the main one, is you don't want data exposed. However, you don't want to be a roadblock to people's progress. So what he needed in particular, I'm going off memory here, so James, don't be mad at me, is like he needed certain departments that like out of the right away, they're like given their default like data loss prevention policies that like eliminate the HTTP connector, eliminate all the troublesome ones, and they're just ready to go and like zero oversight because you've really locked down their environment as much as you can. So he needed from where COE was kind of limiting him, is he needed like a dashboard ability to see like which are all my environments that are in this state of like minimally allowed to do stuff. And then he needed a separate environment where people who are more advanced citizen developers who wanted access to be able to like use some of the more advanced connectors, they need to be able to like make a request, fill out an application, here's what I'm doing with it. And then like James or whoever was on his team needs to be able to like review some of these and then step in and be like, okay, what you guys are doing is very advanced, or what you're doing is trying to connect to these other environments. So we got to step in and find out what's going on. So he mostly needed like full transparency as to like, who are the people who are just doing basic stuff? Who are the ones that need more advanced things and just need more privileges, and then who are the ones that shouldn't be doing this because what they're doing is so advanced you should actually bring in external developers to help them.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Yeah, I think another one is also environment groups, right? If your environment doesn't have managed environments, sorry, this is not an option for you, but if you have managed environments, environment grouping with a DLP policies, who gets to go to which one, that is the best way to go to start an environment correctly. So talking about third-party tools, are there any third-party tools or techniques that you use to get deeper insights in Power Platform performance?
Yeah, so a lot of times especially if any of the operations are running through Azure, I don't really call this third-party, but like using application insights helps a lot. Kind of what I was showing you with that error handler in Power Automate, like you could technically argue that's an example of like custom logging. I know that, or especially around like if you're getting into like performance testing or any of that, or like any kind of that type of monitoring, I remember this was years ago and I haven't used it in forever, but if you're like customizing and tracking like telemetry within your APIs, this is usually adjacent to Power Platform. We were using Datadog, which was excellent for that. Again, now you're getting really into pro code land. So I personally haven't found great ones that are Power Platform specific. I've usually used it in conjunction with Azure tools specific for pro coding in Azure, as opposed to just Power Platform. But if you all have some that are specific for Power Platform monitoring, would love to know.
I love the Automation Center. I know it's not in GCC, but I love that. And also now in each flow, there is flow analytics, where it shows how many actions were ran in the last week or something. So I think 2 weeks ago, I have a customer got this email that this service account ran this flow and it have used 80% of the capacity. It ran about, I think, 100K actions within the 24 hours. It was from the Center of Excellence that it ran because they just added about 20K users in their intra-ID environment due to merging. So it was pulling all that data at once. So I'm really loving Microsoft is creating or adding new tools that are in preview right now. That we can see how many actions are used, how many flow errors, and by what time.
Nice. What's that one called? Automation Center? Isabelle?
Yeah, Automation Center. It's not in GCC tenants yet. It creates the flow tables. It will go through all the flow on all the flow runs, which one that have failed and stuff like that.
Oh, so and we built this manually. So, and I know our next guest, David Wyatt, has built an add-on for that. I know I saw that. This is really cool, and yeah, I think pretty cool to hear that. But one last thing from my side. So we had a customer with more than 200,000 E3 users, and were started with Power Platform without limits. And now I know the Center of Excellence has a data lake behind, and this helps a lot because if you have so much apps and workflows in a Center of Excellence, it's not easy to handle. And yeah, this sounds really cool. So Isabelle, this would be a cool topic for an meeting here or for next stream to get an overview about this tool. Really cool. So, but we need to move forward. The next part is the performance testing strategies. So which performance testing strategies do you have, Sean?
Yeah, so it depends if we're doing like load testing or we're doing like more like end-to-end like unit testing or regression tests. So in this case, if you wrote a custom C# plugin, congrats. You can set up a unit test. You can go to .NET. You can set up any of the mocking libraries, and you're fine, and it'll do that. What I found is the trickiest part is like something happens in Dataverse, which triggers a bunch of other things, and then I need to see like what was the end result. And unfortunately, and I also then need to go delete all that mock data. I've seen some tools come out for it, and it's like slowly getting there, but I've only really been at companies that had to really like build their own using pro code tools. Like they would use, what is it? It's like, I think it's called Selenium. It lets you run certain scripts and really like even interact with the screen, and you can like automate it. And then at the end, you can just have like a deletion job. It's all pro code, but it will do all of that for you. The closest I found for like a low code alternative is Canvas Apps has, few people talk about it. It's got that testing suite. And then there, I've noticed like people usually use it for testing like Canvas app UI features. I usually care less about testing those. I mean, I'm sure that like right away, users are going to be like, there's a problem. The button's not appearing. It's quickly. I'm not worried about that. I have, in certain use cases, repurposed that to actually go test Power Automate Flow operations. So it can go and run a Power Automate Flow, make sure my response is back, and you can set up a series of tests for it. I found that a bit annoying to maintain, especially as your flows get more complex. And then you still need to deal with like, if you're doing any kind of creation of records, now you got to delete them. It doesn't solve that problem very well, but it does if you just have flows that just return data and don't do anything additive. That can be a fine low code alternative.
Good, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, speaking about Power Automates, but let's speak about someone else in the ring, Logic Apps. So basically, there's a very heated debate in the Microsoft Cloud world, Power Automates versus Logic Apps. Really powerful tools, same family, different personalities, so to say, a bit like my brother and me. On your mind or on your opinion on this, Sean, who is the king of automation?
Who is the king of automation? I'm supposed to say like Logic Apps because it's so much more pro coding and you get all these benefits. No, to me, the winner is like whatever suits your organization. Like Power Automate is there. It's within like your licensing. If you get your premium licensing, it's within your, if you're getting like Isabelle mentioned, like managed environments, you're going to have to pay for premium something anyways. So you could choose that one. Power Automate is lovely. Yes, it's, I wouldn't even argue that it's like less powerful than Logic Apps, because there's certain things you can do that Logic Apps can't inside of Power Automate. There's a tiny amount of connectors. I forget which ones they are. And few people, I think, really care, because I can't even remember them off the top of my head. But approvals, for instance, can't do any of that in Logic Apps. Also, what I enjoy about Power Automate is just like how affordable it is and how much it keeps everything in the Power Platform ecosystem. It stays within solutions. You could still deploy them the same way you've been doing. Once you get into Logic Apps, like you're getting into source control, you're getting into Azure pricing, you need to go to your customer and ask them to give you an exception for whatever. And then their whole IT department is wondering what you're doing in their Azure environment. So I find that part kind of annoying. I also have here, we'll see, it'll probably load in like 7 minutes. So I'll try to fill the time as my screen is shared. I worked on this amazing blog post that mostly Marcel wrote, and I just kind of like added graphics to it. I don't know when this thing is going to appear, but we basically compared the pricing of Logic Apps to Power Automate. And Marcel, I don't want to speak for you, but you went in and you started calculating how much you were actually paying for like the limit in Power Automate on one license, like 40,000 actions. And we compared that. And do you remember like kind of what you were seeing? We were getting into some like discussions of enterprise versus premium connector, and it like the documentation wasn't even accurate.
So I think the answer, I think, is pretty easy. So if you, so this is what we do for a lot of customers. If we see we need premium connectors in Power Automate, we can take a look. It's better to build this workflow in Logic Apps. And the second important one is how often you trigger the Logic Apps. Because if you do this every second or every 30 seconds, it will raise your cost very high. And this is and this is what we talk about. This is the most, I would say, points where you can save money. For example, and the times where you didn't want to use a Logic App, you can deactivate and activate this. We do this with some workflows, and this is totally different to Power Automate. You can run Power Automate the whole day, but you save a lot of money if a Logic Apps doesn't triggers.
For sure. And then I remember this was really helpful when we spoke, because it's something we don't really care about as much, but it is very key in Logic Apps, where if you're using built-in connectors like compose, variables, all of this stuff, that costs a certain amount of money. But then if you use standard connectors, which is SharePoint, Dataverse. So to us in Power Automate land, we think of Dataverse as like a premium thing, but they don't really use those words. To them, it's a standard connector, which is anything that isn't basic coding operations. And you'll see that the price kind of jumps. And I remember we compared the two, and what we ended up finding is that as you, what was it? If you're running 40,000 actions at this price, it totals up to about $5 a day. And you'll notice, like, as this keeps going, if you're running this many operations, Power Automate actually ends up being cheaper. It ends up just being $20 a month. However, as Marcel, I remember you pointed out, like, who's actually running that much? So in this case, you got to consider that. So I found Power Automate to be great in terms of pricing, but obviously in the Logic Apps, you get the fact that it can always be running. Like if your Power Automate flow stops doing stuff, in 3 months, it's just going to be automatically shut off. So if you have like a job that runs every 3 months, consider Logic Apps so you don't have to worry about that. And for the price, if it's running that infrequently, why pay $20 a month? Pay like a few cents. And then, of course, everyone loves Logic Apps. It gives you like, first, it gives you managed identity, which is huge. And then it also gives you a lot of little custom code snippets you can add. You don't have to use custom connectors to get around that. So that one is awesome. But still, big fan of Power Automate.
I think so. With this is I think our next question is nearly, we get the answer from you. Where do logic apps dominate over Power Automate? So, and yeah, we talk about this. One is, I think, performance. I think I saw one of your last posts, and this was really, really impressive to see. This was regarding to our own knowledge here regarding to the performance. Could you show this post or tell us something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. I'm happy you brought it up. Sorry, I just opened our video of us talking right now, and it was very weird to see myself that many times. So let me quickly hit present here. Okay, as that loads up. Okay, it's going to take a second. Isabelle, I'm sure you know, because you have to film yourself. It's weird looking at yourself that many times. I can't tell if I'm becoming more or less self-conscious with time. So here I have three. Let me load it. Okay, you can't really see it, but this flow right here, it does a list row. It doesn't apply to each. It's super not performant on purpose because I want to prove a point. So this flow runs super slow. I took this flow, these 6 actions, and I put them in 3 different places. I put them in Power Automate. I put them in a Power Automate flow. I took the same flow. I put it into Logic Apps. I put it in a stateless function and a stateful function. I'll explain what those mean in a second. But what you'll notice is the stateless Logic App absolutely destroys by a magnitude of like 30 compared to Power Automate or Logic Apps. Like if we run this one finished running this flow in 1 second. Logic Apps took 8 seconds. Power Automate took all the way to 18. I did this over and over again. Sometimes this was 30. Sometimes this was 15. This was like 1 at best 2 seconds every single time. That is like a colossal advantage of Logic Apps over Power Automate, is the fact that in Logic Apps, you can use these like stateless functions. They obviously come with a lot of limitations. Like you don't get as many triggers. It's honestly HTTP, service bus, and like a couple others that are made for queues. They also are, they can only run for 5 minutes. So a better finish within 5 minutes, but you saw how quick it runs. So 5 minutes should be enough. That is huge. Not to mention all the other things we said with Logic Apps, like you get price, I think you can vibe code Logic Apps now. You can get them into source control in ways that aren't as nice with Power Automate. Those are some of the immediate callouts.
Sounds good. But thank you for the insight. I too is not too familiar with Logic Apps, so it's very nice to see the differences when one of them excels the other. All right, let's dive into our next section. It's time for our favorite session. So where we try to solve your specific performance problems in real time. Let's see what your burning questions you have for us. Let's see.
So now is the time for Mirko. Okay.
Basically, best practice to use the terminate action and set it to theta, avoid silent failures, says Ralph Redas. Okay, so basically it's more remarks.
Yeah, best practice to use terminate action and set it to avoid silent failures. Well, if you're having, if your flow is failing and you are handling it through Teams, that it's not really silent because you're getting notified about it. One really clever idea, I think George Dubinsky thought of it, and then Agnes made a post about it, which is the idea of you use a custom. It's hard to just like fail a Power Automate action on a Power Automate flow on purpose. So what you can do instead is you make a custom connector whose whole job is just to return 404, return an error, and then you use that as your little hack, and then that will force fail your flow, which could be a convenience.
I think they're talking about the scope where you try and catch. When you catch it on the Power Automate backend, it doesn't show that it has failed. So if we're pulling it from the automation center, it still shows as success, even if it has failed with the scope. So I would always add a terminate fail, just so in the backend you can see something had failed.
Okay, that makes way more sense than everything I just said.
Great.
All right, next one.
So, yeah. I've been struggling with slow Power Automate flows. How can I identify whether the issue lies in my flow logic or with the data source themselves?
That one's fun. So in this one, first depends on what your data source is. Is it SharePoint? The next one is, I'm curious how you're pulling it, especially like how complex those relationships are. One thing you can do is, as a sanity check, is have your Power Automate flow point to like a different list or just like maybe a simple Dataverse table and see if you're still having those problems. Because if so, then it probably isn't necessarily the data source, but your flows themselves. Inside of the flows, it depends on like, is a specific logic step failing? And if so, why? Those are the areas I usually go to. I'm curious what the rest of the groups thinks.
I would just go to the flow run and check if it fails. Sometimes SharePoint does fail with the 404 sometimes. If there's a lot of SharePoint connectors running from the other flows, I would try a filter query, like you said, trying another list as well. I would say if it's more than 5 seconds, there's something wrong, in my opinion. 5 seconds is a long time for API to go and come back.
It depends. I think the SharePoint API is very slow.
I would disagree. Unless you're going 50K items, then it shouldn't be more than 5 seconds.
But wait, Isabelle. So you say actually SharePoint can provide a 404? Really?
Yeah,
So because then in this,
Mhm.
because in that case, I've been on the federal highway to SharePoint lately in my car. It showed federal highway number 404. I was a bit, so perhaps I was on my way to SharePoint basically in that case.
It could, yeah.
Okay, so Christian Wulff is asking, how can we use this concept for huge PA projects when the flow can have multiple errors from different branches? How can we prevent the error handler to trigger multiple times and instead to send a request once with all the errors listed in the table?
For sure. Well, if you're using like a parent flow and you're using like child flows, don't put any error handling in any of the child flows, because if any of those crash, they'll roll up to the parent flow. I know Agnes, who we talked about earlier, I think has done workshops specifically on that. So you just keep that flow in the parent flow. If you have multiple scattered different flows around that don't really connect to each other, like you don't really have an option there. You're going to need to link it on all those flows. But then like consider again, can you make any of them like child relationships? Can you put them all as do the parent-child concept, as opposed to they're all just triggering off of Dataverse or triggering off of SharePoint, is one approach to that one.
Cool.
That works.
Select works when and should not be used when.
It should be used all the time, every day, for everything. Actually, I'm happy he brought it up. If I can share my screen quickly and show when it's done very, very poorly, and it's not anyone's fault, but it's just like it's just a miss on some of it. So you will see here that. And then, by the way, team, if you don't want me to screen share this, we can move on to the next question.
No, we can actually.
Cool.
As soon as it starts to share, right? That's the point.
Yeah, if you have an array and you're not using a select action, what are you doing?
Living your best life and getting things done slow. That's what you're doing. All right, so I see this problem happen all the time. If we look here, we see we have a lot of data in this array before we modify it. So here I have all of this stuff. And then what we do is... really?
Yeah, not sharing. Yeah.
All right, what's the next question? We'll come back.
Next. We got 1 more minute.
There are always two things in our call, right? So either microphone is off or you're not sharing. So both of one. We had skipped the question. Hey, bring it back, Mirko. This is why Mirko is always in the back. This is you stay there. It's our meeting doggy, so it's okay. While the other question is loading, let's move on to another question from Rivers. Cloud patterns apply here. I think it was related to a question to something beforehand that we missed, perhaps, or you talked about.
Do cloud patterns apply? Does anyone remember the context?
No, not really.
No, not really.
Oh, this goes back to Isabelle, what you were saying, but does the flow then succeed? Well, you mentioned just drop a failure action and you're fine, right?
Yeah. Okay. I think there's one question about parse JSON, about the schema not working.
Yeah.
Yes. Good one.
You want to answer that?
So I avoid parse JSON. I don't like it just because if the schema does change, I don't like dealing with it. And I've seen people do really advanced stuff like add options or whatever. I don't know. I've been lucky enough with my flows that like just using that question mark notation and making it optional makes it so I never ever have to worry about the schema changing or remembering that I built enough optional parameters in my schema to avoid it. So that's where I stand, which is maybe a bit archaic. I'm curious if people are using parse JSON. I mostly see parse JSON fail more than not. So,
well, it honestly depends. Sorry, go ahead, Marcel. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm running only in two errors with parse JSON. One is something with null, and when I edit it, and with the required fields. And if I see that a lot of fields are not filled, I change the required fields in parse JSON. And when parse JSON works for me in nearly 100% of every cases that I have.
My argument is, why are you using the parse JSON for? My argument is that if you're doing get item and then using a parse JSON, what the heck are you doing? Like the reason you use parse JSON is to be lazy, so you can just open the pop and select which one it is. I use parse JSON as a mapping. You write your own JSON. I always do send errors to this environment variable. So then my other actions are referring to that one parse JSON action. So it's just to reference and for me to be lazy, just select it from the pop-up.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah. What the heck are you doing? Exactly. This is my T-shirt. Sentence of the day. It's wonderful.
If it doesn't add value, why are you adding more stuff? You know.
Right.
What the heck are you doing? And it depends. Are two most important things, especially in the consultancy area. So it's okay. Sean, what's your go-to troubleshooting method when dealing with unexplained flow timeouts or unexpected delays?
Yeah, so there's a few. When it comes to certain flow timeouts, obviously, as Isabelle said earlier, you just got to go to the flow itself, pinpoint the action, try to find out what's going on. I've noticed that the weirdest ones is when I'm connected to some custom API that some other team is managing, and sometimes it times out, sometimes it does not. Usually in those cases, I would set up a separate flow where I'm just going to go blast it with a lot of requests and try to like give them some kind of like Excel spreadsheet of like, here's what it's doing. Here's the timeouts I'm getting. Here it is when I send over like 10 records, 50, 100. Is there like a pattern I'm seeing? Maybe it's the amount of records I'm sending it, or maybe it's the particular endpoint that I'm sending it to. Like, does this endpoint work? Does this endpoint not work? When it comes to timeouts and delays, I'm experiencing them the most on custom APIs. So I just try to give the most thorough like document of what I'm seeing and try to run it through a bunch of operations. When I send them something that says, hey, this API is timing out, they're just like, okay, what? And they try it and it works. And I'm like, no. Like, here's actual data of what it is and isn't. That's helped me the most. Otherwise, timeouts and unexpected delays, I rarely get them incredibly inconsistency on like any Microsoft products or like tools. Like, sure, SharePoint is slow, but like predictably slow. Or if my Dataverse fetch XML is really complicated, it's going to be predictably very slow. It's rare for me that one of those is really misbehaving, is my experience. And if it is really misbehaving, it's like a one-off.
Okay, cool. Then, Mirko, blend in the next question, please. The data model connect to a Power BI dataset.
Do you want some context? I think talking about the Azure Synapse when you put into Fabric.
Yeah.
Sure. Let me see if I got it still here. I'll pull it up. Okay. I'll keep it quick. Well, I don't know if this, we'll see if my screen even shares. So that will be a lot of this. Oh, sweet. All right. So Power BI to Dataverse, you understand that it doesn't really work well in large data sets for the TDS endpoint, which is how Power BI connects to Dataverse. So like everything I mentioned here, like this is going to be really tricky for it. So in those cases, what I've seen is, also this is an important limitation. It can only run for about 5 minutes. So very similar to like Logic App's stateless function. So you have to watch out for how long your connection is. Like if it has to keep fetching and fetching and fetching because the query is complex, if you hit the 5 minutes, you're out of luck. You're not going to get all of your data. Basically, what I was saying is Azure Synapse lets you set up, you set up your Azure Synapse environment. And then by default, it's going to give you data lake storage. It's going to give you tools like Azure Synapse Analytics. It also is really locked down. So you have a lot of control over permissions, over who can do what, because you are in Azure and it is following, RBAC security. Oh, and this is cool. It also follows, I forget this, it follows your existing Dataverse security rules, which is very cool. So even if you're not very good at this, it'll at least respect this, which is nice. So yeah, you would get all of these tools that you can do different things. Like you can either connect them from Power BI. You can use, like Spark and run, connect to it. You can run certain other data jobs if you want to. You have a lot of different options once you put all of this into Synapse or into Fabric.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And now Ulrike asks, how do you effectively communicate the importance of performance optimization to business stakeholders who might underestimate its impact?
Yeah, I feel like I've been talking a lot. Does anybody else want to take this? I'm happy to take it. I just, there's a bunch of smart people in the room. So
I think most of them came for you, Sean. That's why you have a fan.
I feel like should call it the Sean show. So it's like
how do you effectively money? I would say that's for anything, not even performance, not even maintenance, especially governance. So there are three things that stakeholders care about in my entire experience. You either are making them more money, you are saving them money, or you are securing their systems. Everything you do has to connect to those three. If you can't find an explanation to those three, they won't care. So if you're saying, I'm taking my building this Power Automate job that's going to save like 7 seconds on every transaction, like who cares? That's just math and nerd talk. Nobody cares. But by saving 7 seconds on every transaction means that my customer gets to complete their shopping cart purchase within 7 seconds and doesn't have that delay to start to think maybe I should cancel my purchase. And then can we see how many cancellations happen? And then after you built this, prove to them that, hey, cancellations went down by like 20%, which means we made like 30K more a year. You're going to go get promoted. Like that's you speaking in business. I feel like actually most of my time is spent doing the word gymnastics to convince them to do this, as opposed to like me really, like I find architecture sometimes easier than finding the words to sell this stuff.
But that's actually the point. The future, that we are in a situation at the moment where AI is emerging more and more. This is not only a buzzword. It's basically puts more emphasis on explaining things and thinking ahead and less on finding things out. And our job is basically to be the bridge between the stakeholders on one side and the nerds on the other side. So being able to effectively communicate why we are doing this in a way that matters is far more important than having the correct answer. The correct answer is what brings the business ahead. This is why they basically want us. If you say it saves 4 seconds or 7 seconds, for what? Actually, if those 7 seconds happened in the background, nobody would notice this because it is a process that goes in parallel, and nobody notices it because it does not harm the business by any means. Nobody cares. You won't get any money. You need to justify something that is not justifiable as long as you are not a nerd that likes to do refactoring. The business topics, they are the sponsors. They need to be convinced and they need answers. They also have other sponsors they also need to convince, so it's our job to do this. This is my honest opinion. So it's our job to find it out again and again and again.
That's something I would put it into AI and translate your nerd talk into business talk. And
exactly.
Yeah, and then prove it. Like Sean said, prove how many seconds and show them data.
Exactly. That's the point. Exactly. Cool. We need to speed up a bit, which is always the case when I'm part of a show. So I try to speed up. Should you be transparent with stakeholders by including them on the Power Automate's error handling notifications, assuming you have cleaned it up to show the errors and helpful flow run links instead of gibberish? So that's exactly. Okay, Rabbit.
Yeah. I don't want them freaking out. I don't want them to see all my dirty laundry and how I coded it poorly. I want to go fix it before they even notice. The only time I would ever do that is if it's a more like front end facing thing and they keep like messing up on their own. If it's that type of an error, like they upload an Excel file and it used to be processed, like maybe there I would scan and find like errors because they like, I don't know, misspelled countries or something. Then I would, in that case, or like they picked the wrong type of car, sure, I would send them a message there, log that error, and then like give them transparency so they don't bother me about it. But like anything that happens on like the back end, no.
I make it dependable from the kind of stakeholders we are having. So, and sometimes you have the administrators on the back end that to some extent would like to know, at least to be informed in case they do have some actions to perform or want to get some notifications. It's rarely the case, but it happens. In that case, I provide them more insights. But again, I try to avoid them because most of the time it would perhaps bring them in a situation where they have more question marks than answers. So that's the point. And it's not every error message is an error. So that's a real one you need to deal about. Again, it comes to the stakeholder management. Okay. So is it N8N? N8N. I don't know the context again.
I don't know what that means.
N8N is an open source workflow tool.
Yeah,
but
it looks like Power Automate on steroids. It might not be. I haven't used it. Paul Morano, by the way, is the king of finding tools that complement Power Platform outside of Power Platform. So if he's bringing this up, it must be good stuff. Now I'm going to want to go play with it and see what kind of automations it can do. And their website is almost as exciting as our intro song.
Awesome. So if the website is as interesting as the tool, then okay. So I missed a question, but I moved to Hunter White now at the moment. If it's a critical, I agree. I would, however, include them on a non-critical flows because it provides a great learning opportunity for them, and I can walk them through it if needed. Again, the context.
I agree with that. Also, if there is if my operations or whatever we built is connecting to some external system and I need the external developers to know, that would be a great reason to include if they are tech. I don't know if they're considered stakeholders at that point, but I would include them as well.
Yeah, definitely. If you have the flow run link there and they don't have permission, maybe they're not the right person to receive that error handling email.
Exactly. Okay, was this the last? No, this is the last question. Christian Wolf. I'm working with a lot of AI models along Power Automate. Is there a way we can capture the amount of credits used for each model inside Power Automate? I'm thinking of building a log file and monitor how many credits are used for each document type. Insert coin, please. So.
If you find out, let me know, because I'm trying to find out. So yeah, maybe there's something Microsoft is working on with AI models, maybe. But I think they're spending most of their money and energy into Copilot. But AI models, it's a little bit dragging along since it's within the Power Platform or Power Automate world.
I think for Copilot Studios now an overview in the admin center. But for AI Builder, I don't know. Sean, do you know it?
For this one on in terms of like how to track my AI model spending?
I think so, yeah.
No, I haven't found a tool that's out of the box that's nice like that. I will say he was asking about Power Automate. If he's using AI Builder, it's way more expensive than if he just makes a call directly to Azure AI Foundry. Like you're looking at like what is the 200, 500 at least to get started. I know you get a certain amount of AI Builder credits for free, but still like you're going to pay a high price tag just to have anything more than that versus Azure AI Foundry is pennies. Like I make tons of calls to that every day and it does the same thing AI Builder does for next to nothing. Credit to Damian Bird. He was the first person I saw kind of talk about that approach rather than using AI Builder.
But it could be a strategy for customer who bought a Power Automate premium licenses to take a look where could use where I would say per user 500 credits per month. I think I think every one of us has customer with premium actions and with premium Power Automate licenses and when it's for these 500 credits are included per user per month, and this could be interesting. I think this part, but it's really hard to get the actual status of a used credits. You must calculate it. I know no site or something like else or what you can do with a shell script or something else.
Yeah, I know in the Power Platform Admin Center, it kind of tells you which environment and which user have used this X credits, but it doesn't tell you one model, one flow have consumed X credits.
Do you know, is this in this new automation center is where in better
Automation Center, it's really only for the Power Automate flows, but the AI Builder, it's a kind of separate toolbox, I would say.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My brain is burning. We have covered really a lot of topics today. If our viewers remember just 3 things from today's stream, what should they be, Sean? We always start with Sean here. So.
If our users have 3 things that they should take away from today.
Yeah.
Follow Isabelle's channel, follow Marcel's channel, follow Fortunato and Sean's channel. Done. Next question.
I draw.
Yeah.
So when I would say follow Sean, and you can find this video on YouTube. You should look on Sean's site as he make great stuff. You should take a look on Isabelle's site. He makes great stuff too, and this YouTube channel. So I hope she posts in the future on M365 Show too, because her videos are really great. And Isabelle, what is our next episode?
So for the next month, on the 7th of August, we'll be diving into supercharge your Power Automate dev workflow with David Wyatt with amazing add-ons. So I'm excited to see what that is about, and I will be there as well.
Yay. Great. Wonderful, guys. Huge.
Sound.
1 second here. Huge thanks to Sean for joining us today, sharing his or your expertise. Thanks to Marcel and Isabelle and Marcel for their insights, and most importantly, thanks to all of you out there, you, for watching and asking great questions. We couldn't answer every question. It's our fault. It's okay. It's us problem, not a you problem. Let us stay friends, and that's it from my side. So, thank you very much. Keep building,
Thanks,
keep
everyone.
optimizing. That's the point, right? See you next time.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Flows break down, data moves slow, loops keep spinning. Where does it go? You're building apps, but time's a thief. Your platform stuck, you're losing belief. Click by click, you try to mend, but delegation breaks again. SharePoint stalls, Dataverse screams. Feels like you're coding in broken dreams. No more killers in the code. Power up, it's time to go. Automate or logic flow. Pick your side, let's steal the show. From zero to hero, now's the time. Optimize the speed, redefine. Watch us break the limits, rise. It's performance time, we electrify. Queries drag, loops overflow. What's the fix? You need to know. Is it SQL, SharePoint, or something clean? We're dropping tips straight from the scene. Monitor, measure it, factor your flow. No more timeout, just watch it go. It's